Do you ever feel like a fraud despite your best success as a parent or even in your career or otherwise? Well, today we're going to explore imposter syndrome and uncover how it impacts high-achieving parents and all parents in between. So join me and learn insights and practical tips to conquer these feelings and boost your confidence for a more fulfilling life. Hey parents, welcome to Fulfillment Therapy. Do you want to raise your kids better and have a stronger marriage? Are you up late at night researching marriage and parenting tools and self-care tips? Do you start each day hoping for deeper connections and less chaos, but it ends with family arguments and going 12 different directions again? My name's Kendra, wife, mom, therapist, and growth enthusiast. It wasn't until I discovered how to fulfill my unmet needs that I was finally able to show up as my best self as a spouse and parent. I realized that by meeting my needs, I could more fully meet the needs of my family with more energy and less resentment. In this podcast, I teach parents skills like boundary setting, prioritizing personal needs, communication, and claiming ownership. Just like my clients, you'll be shocked by the improvement in your marriage, parenting, and personal life when you focus on fulfilling your important unmet needs. Ready to prioritize yourself so you can quit mentally throat punching people? Then grab those earbuds and head outside, and let's rock and talk. Welcome back to Fulfillment Therapy. We are on episode 149. We're getting so close to episode 150. Today is called Defeating the Fraud, Overcoming Imposter Syndrome as an Adult and Parent. So if you are new here, I have to remember that a lot of you are. I want to welcome you back to Fulfillment Therapy. And this is a podcast where we explore strategies to help you and your family live a more fulfilled and meaningful life. I'm your host, Kendra Nielsen, and today we're tackling a topic that many high-achieving parents are struggling with: imposter syndrome. This is a very pervasive feeling of unworthiness, and it really can significantly impact our personal lives, and in turn, our families. We'll uncover what imposter syndrome is, and I'm going to share some actionable tips to help you overcome these feelings to create that more fulfilling life that I was talking about for not only yourself, but for your loved ones. But before we get started, don't forget to check out fulfillmenttherapy.org and check out the show notes that will connect you to us in all of the places from Instagram to Facebook. And you can always get details on the podcast episode there. And I also share a number that you can text if you have different topics you'd like us to hit on, or if you're interested in signing up for one-on-one coaching, or even our coming courses, but you have some questions on it. Just text us and one of us will get back to you on the team, either me or my team members. And on fulfillmenttherapy.org, you can sign up for our email list, and we will send you updates and trainings and free resources without having to pay a therapist. So this is the place to do it. All right, now let's get back to this episode on imposter syndrome. So what is that? I know you generally probably know what that is, but that's that persistent feeling like I talked about of being a fraud despite evident success in your life and achievements. And you truly don't see them as such. You kind of poo-poo it or something, or just minimize any of that. It's more than that occasional self-doubt, but it's this deep-seated fear of being exposed as unworthy. Dr. Valerie Young is an expert on imposter syndrome, and she said, "The more successful you become, the more you may feel like a fraud." I know that I have personally felt that way before, actually quite a bit. And the more that I rub shoulders with other leadership out there or experts in the field, I am reassured almost that I am not the only one. And honestly, especially as a parent, I feel like there's this added pressure with both my husband and I being therapists, and even as a personal trainer, that I'm always under a microscope a little bit and wondering what people are thinking and trying not to think about that. And yet I do. And I often think, oh man, they're going to figure it out. Like, I'm not everything I could be or should be. I really try to manage those thoughts and not go down that road. And yet it does creep up every once in a while, especially as you get more successful, and it opens that door to more critics, essentially. And I know maybe not many of you have critics necessarily. I hope that you don't. But that imposter syndrome might be creeping up in your own life. When I was researching this, I discovered several stories of people feeling like imposters that I want to share with you because I just think it's very interesting. The first one I want to share is from Jodie Foster. She's one of my favorite actresses. She's just so powerful. I love her in a lot of her older movies, just incredible. But this is what she said in an interview with 60 Minutes. She thought winning an Oscar was a fluke, just like her first day of college. And this is what she said. It was the same way when I walked on campus at Yale. I thought everybody would find out and they'd take the Oscar back. They'd come to my house knocking on the door. Excuse me, we meant to give that to someone else. And I love that this powerhouse had the same thing. And actually Meryl Streep said something very similar, not about Jodie Foster, but about something else. That regular occurrence of feeling like you're not worthy. Let's take that understanding of imposter syndrome just a little bit deeper. It can manifest in a variety of ways, and it's often marked by unrealistically high standards of this fear of being found out. I'm doing parentheses here, found out, but you can't see that. These feelings can lead to significant consequences, such as missed opportunities or reduced productivity, even low self-esteem or burnout or social isolation, depression and anxiety. And I see these things a lot in my clients. Think about that with you. Do you feel like you miss opportunities or that you have low self-esteem or you're burned out or any of those things, the depression, anxiety? Because that can be a symptom or a sign of imposter syndrome. There's another quick story I want to share of this author and columnist and co-founder of the Huffington Post. But this is what she said. The greatest obstacle for me has been the voice in my head that I call my obnoxious roommate. I wish someone would invent a tape recorder that we could attach to our brains to record everything we tell ourselves. We would realize how important it is to stop this negative self-talk. It means pushing back against our obnoxious roommate with a dose of wisdom. I'll find her name and I'll put that in the show notes, but isn't that such a good quote? And I love how she says that. Our obnoxious roommate. Our obnoxious roommate really does tell us all the things that we're doing wrong, and that negative self-talk is just unrealistic. This reminds me of my daughter yesterday was getting really frustrated by learning the ukulele, and she's brand new, but she just kept saying things like, I'm just so stupid, just terrible self-talk. And I asked her, I was like, would you tell that to your brother? Would you tell that to your friend? You would never talk like that to somebody else. And that negative self-talk, it's unkind and it's just not true. Now, it's easy to see in others, but it's not as easy to see in ourselves sometimes. But let's talk about this in another place. Maybe it's at work or in relationships. Let's give a hypothetical scenario here. Emily just started a job and she feels like she's constantly on the brink of being exposed as maybe incompetent or just not measuring up despite having a very impressive resume. And she dwells on her mistakes and discounts her successes. Now, Jack, on the other hand, has a wonderful spouse, but he's haunted by these feelings of unworthiness and he hides his flaws. And he's so convinced that his spouse will leave him if it ever comes to light. Those flaws that he thinks that are so big. Maybe you're Jack, maybe you're Emily, wherever it is, whether in parenting or in work, wherever. These scenarios are all too common, especially among high-achieving people like parents or individuals, and especially from underrepresented groups. It's estimated that around 70% of people have experienced imposter syndrome at some point in their lives. And that 30% that have not felt that, I want to talk to them because that's impressive. Here's another quick story for you. So Emma Watson, as you know, she played Hermione in Harry Potter. She's an actress, a model, and lots of other things. But she admitted to falling into the trap of imposter syndrome when she was in an interview with Vogue. And this is what she said. Now when I receive recognition for my acting, I feel incredibly uncomfortable. I tend to turn in on myself. I feel like an imposter. Any moment someone's going to find out I'm a total fraud and that I don't deserve any of what I've achieved. Does this feel familiar to you? I feel like I've definitely felt that. I think one of the best parts about getting a little bit older, I would not classify myself as old, but getting older and wiser is the more that you do that inner work, the less power these things have. And when I hear statements like this from Emma Watson or from my clients, it's a sign that there's other things going on and there's major insecurities there. But obviously she is quite talented, but for her to think that she's a total fraud and that she doesn't deserve any of that she's not good enough, that underlying message, that's what we work on in therapy. And that's what we really try to explore and peel back the layers of that. Let's talk about the risk factors and key facts here. So certain things increase the risk of imposter syndrome, such as being in a toxic or a hostile environment. So it could be a really bad workplace, for example, or a really unhealthy spouse. It could be a number of things. This could be experiencing discrimination or being the first in the family to take on a specific role. Obviously, having low self-esteem, I talked about that already, or growing up in an achievement-oriented household. Even having those perfectionist tendencies. These are things that we really want to be aware of. Otherwise, we're just going to pass on that pattern to the next generation. Like, I'm very much a high achiever, and I think about that a lot sometimes. Is my high achievement unrealistic for my family members? Or am I elevating them without that major pressure? Or am I encouraging them in healthy ways that inspire them? So I also found in my research that imposter syndrome is particularly prevalent among women and minorities who face pressures to prove themselves. That should not be a surprise. Well, since Michelle Obama is in both of those categories, I wanted to share a quote by her. She says, "I still have a little imposter syndrome. It doesn't go away. That feeling that you shouldn't take me seriously. What do I know? I share that with you because we all have doubts in our abilities, about our power, and what that power is." I think that was a great quote. Like, we all have that. And we all doubt our abilities, about our power and what our power is. Is that you as a parent? Is that you in a career? How does that show up for you? Well, I'm going to give you a few tips on how to overcome imposter syndrome because we all want that, right? And as we do so, we can overcome it and achieve that greater fulfillment in our personal life, which in turn benefits our family. Always. The things that we do to improve ourselves benefit our family as long as we are not overdoing that self-focus. So number 1, recognize and acknowledge your feelings. So the tip is start by acknowledging that you're experiencing imposter syndrome and recognize that these feelings are common and they don't reflect your true abilities. You can write down your achievements and positive feedback you've been given, or even that you can give yourself to counteract that negative self-talk. For example, remember how I mentioned my daughter and ukulele? I could have her sit down and write what she's doing well, the things that she's seen as far as success since she started, or maybe even in other areas of her life, when she's just starting to learn something, and maybe even what she would tell her best friend. Number 2, reframe your thinking. So the tip is challenge those perfectionistic tendencies, which I know so many of you listeners have, and learn to view mistakes as opportunities for growth rather than failures. I love that failing forward thing. Like, I try to tell my kids about that all the time. Like, it's not about perfection. It's just about doing something you're afraid of, like leaning in to those things. Practice self-compassion by treating yourself with the same kindness you would offer your friend in a similar situation. Like I mentioned with my daughter, like a best friend or even a child or something like that, depending on your age. Well, the third tip is talk about your feelings with a good friend or a family member or hopefully a therapist. Sharing your experiences can help normalize them and reduce feelings of isolation. Remember, you are not alone in feeling this way. Some of the examples I gave were from incredibly capable and talented people, and they still feel these things. Okay, number 4, set realistic standards. Underlined. I have to tell myself this all the time, and I tell my clients the same thing. So the tip is reevaluate your standards and set realistic, achievable goals. Like if you've never worked out before, do not say that you are going to work out 6 days a week and it's going to be 2 hours each. Obviously, that's a little bit extreme, but it could be very small, tiny adjustments. I'm going to walk around the block today, and I'm going to do that for 1 month, and then I'm going to do a little bit more. Now, many of us can do more than that, and if you have a bad track record of keeping commitments, then start small. So break those tasks into smaller, manageable steps and celebrate your progress along the way, with your family especially. Okay, last but not least, number 5, focus on your strengths. So the tip is identify your strengths and focus on activities that you can use to leverage them. So engage in tasks that make you feel competent and confident. I know you have those. And remind yourself of your skills and accomplishments regularly. Also underlining that, because especially my moms that come in, this is a big one. Dads too, but I especially see this with moms just feeling like they're not accomplishing a lot, especially if they don't have a career or they don't have talents or passions that they're working on yet. They can feel very discouraged and very much like they are acting like they have it all put together, but in reality, they just feel depressed and anxious and that they're not doing anything with their lives besides being a dishwasher and a launderer and all of these things. And it's very hard to have confidence and not feel like an imposter, especially, I don't even have time to go into it, but in the social media world, like the front that you put on and then seeing everybody else's best of, it's really hard. Quick example of that, for work, I was looking at Pinterest the other day, and there was some influencer that showed a picture of like the posed one in this like tiny little swimsuit, and she looked super fit and amazing. And the next frame was her relaxed and just like a normal picture where somebody might have taken it candidly, and it looked like she had like cellulite and all these things. Like, it is not what it appears. Reality is very different than what is portrayed in social media, but all we do instead is compare from what we see on social media and online. Like, for example, my website or the different areas you see me. I actually should post some of these. If I think about it, I will. But those are not candid pictures. They're just my nicer professional pictures. But if you were to see just anything on my phone, you'd be like, oh, she doesn't look that professional at all. And it's the same with all of us, right? We always feel like imposters when just the good things are put forward. So if you implement these 5 tips that I gave you, or these 5 strategies, you can begin the journey of overcoming imposter syndrome and find that greater fulfillment in your personal life. Like I said, the shift not only benefits you, but it is a positive example for your family members. And this creates an environment where everyone feels valued and capable, and that they can let that negative self-talk go and normalize this experience of imposter syndrome, because we all feel it, from our young children, especially to our teens, to even in your older, elderly age. I hope this helped you just lean in a little bit more and challenge those beliefs that you have about yourself, especially when it comes to imposter syndrome. Thank you for tuning in today to Fulfillment Therapy. If you found these tips helpful, please subscribe and share this podcast with others who might benefit. Remember, overcoming imposter syndrome is a journey, my friends. And taking these steps can lead to a more fulfilling and balanced life for both you and your family. Until next time, take care of yourselves and be kind to yourselves. Don't forget to follow us on social media for more tips and insights, and sign up on fulfillmenttherapy.org for our email list. Have a fantastic day, my friends, and I'll see you back here in just a few days. Hey friends, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, chances are someone else would too. Would you take 30 seconds to share this with a friend who's looking for greater family fulfillment? And while you're sharing, tell me what you think about the show by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. It refuels me when I hear this podcast is helping you. No matter what your house or your hair looks like, I'll meet you back here every Monday and Thursday morning for more episodes. Until then.